When I opened the front door, I wasn't expecting confetti or balloons, but I never thought I'd be greeted with silence and the faint sound of unfamiliar laughter coming from upstairs. My heart thudded as I dragged my suitcase across the hardwood floor, the walls that once felt like safety now echoing like a stranger's home. I called out for my dad, but only got a distant, muffled "just a second" in response. Something felt wrong. The living room was rearranged. My mom's photo wasn't on the mantel anymore. Her favorite vase, the one I made her in 5th grade, was gone. It was the same house, but it didn't belong to me anymore. I just didn't know how far that truth went. Yet, my name is Brielle Turner, and I'm 22 years old. This was supposed to be a short visit home, one weekend back from college to see my family and reset. But what I walked into that day shattered every illusion I had about love, loyalty, and family. If you've ever felt erased from your own life, then stay with me, because this isn't just a story of betrayal. It's about how I turned quiet heartbreak into thunderous revenge. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe for more real, emotional stories, and drop a comment if you've ever been betrayed by the people you trusted most. I left for college 2 years ago with one promise from my dad: this will always be your home, Bri. We'd been through a lot, losing my mom when I was 15, surviving the ache of silence that filled the house afterward, and finding our own rhythm as a father-daughter duo. So I believed him, even when he started dating again, even when he married a woman named Charlene just 6 months after meeting her. I kept my mouth shut, because maybe he deserved happiness too, and maybe I was tired of being the reason he looked so sad all the time. But that Friday afternoon, when I rolled my suitcase up the stairs and opened the door to my old bedroom, I saw something that made me freeze. A girl, probably around 17, was curled up under my sunflower quilt, scrolling through her phone with headphones in. My fairy lights were on. My bookshelf was stocked with books I never left behind. My room was hers now. She looked up, startled. Who are you?" she asked, like I was the intruder. My jaw tightened. "I live here," I said, stepping inside slowly, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. "This is my room." She gave a dry laugh. "Charlene said this room's been mine for months. I'm Gracie, her daughter." I blinked. The room spun slightly, my chest tightening as if the air had been sucked out of it. Gracie. I didn't even know my stepmother had a daughter. No one told me she had moved in, let alone moved into my room. The walls still had my posters, my high school awards, but they were mixed in with her makeup, her laptop, her clothes, like someone had just pasted her life over mine. I stepped back into the hallway, clutching the doorframe for support. My dad's voice echoed from downstairs, cheerful and unaware. "Brielle, that you?" I couldn't even respond. I just stood there, staring at the remnants of my life now occupied by a stranger. When I finally managed to walk down, my dad was in the kitchen with Charlene, both of them sipping wine like they were in some magazine ad for fake perfection. Charlene beamed like she didn't just rip out my roots. "Brielle," she said with fake warmth, "you're early." I didn't respond. I just stared at my father. "She's in my room." I whispered. Dad glanced at Charlene, then back at me. His eyes dropped. "We thought it'd be okay," he said softly. "You're hardly home, and Gracie needed a place to settle. She's still in high school. You've got your apartment near campus." It wasn't just a room. I said, my voice cracking. It was mine, my childhood, my mom. Charlene sighed and placed a hand on my dad's shoulder. "It's just a room, sweetie. Don't make this dramatic." That's when something snapped in me. It wasn't about the bed or the walls. It was that they didn't even ask. They didn't even warn me. I was gone, and they replaced me like I never mattered. Like the years I spent holding that house together after Mom died were disposable. I went upstairs, took my suitcase, and sat on the front steps for nearly 2 hours. I didn't cry, not yet. I just sat there as the sun set behind the houses, thinking about how easy it was for people to push you out once they got what they wanted. I wasn't ready to leave yet, but something inside me knew that this visit would end differently. The next morning, I woke up on the couch. No one said a word, no apology, no acknowledgement, just small talk and shallow smiles. They had moved on, but I hadn't. That night, I opened the bottom drawer of my dad's desk, the one he never let me touch as a kid. I was looking for old pictures of Mom, maybe something to take with me when I left again. Instead, I found a folder that Charlene must have filed away carelessly, bank statements, legal papers, a name I didn't recognize on the deed of our house. And that was the moment everything changed. The folder sat heavy in my hands like it carried the weight of every unspoken betrayal. I hadn't meant to find it. I wasn't digging for secrets, but there it was, cold, legal proof that everything I thought I still belonged to no longer did. My name wasn't anywhere on the documents, not even as a beneficiary. What shocked me more than the paperwork, though, was whose name was printed beneath my dad's on the deed to the house. Charlene Taylor, Turner. Her name, not mine, not even my mom's legacy, just hers. I stood there in the dark living room, the silence pressing in from all corners of the house. Outside, the neighborhood looked exactly the same, porch lights flickering, sprinklers hissing softly, cars tucked in for the night, but inside, something sacred had been stolen. I couldn't hold it in anymore. The next morning, I confronted them at breakfast. Charlene was flipping pancakes like a TV mom, humming as if she hadn't gutted my childhood. Dad sat sipping coffee, checking his phone. I waited until the moment was too normal to ignore, and then I dropped the folder right in the middle of the table. "What is this?" I asked, my voice steady but burning underneath. Charlene blinked like I'd interrupted a performance. Dad slowly looked up, his smile dying in real time. "I found it in the drawer," I continued. "Why is her name on everything?" Charlene didn't hesitate. She didn't stumble or fake sympathy. She just wiped her hands on a towel and said, "Because it's not your house anymore, Brielle." The way she said it, calm, icy, like a queen reminding a servant of their place. Dad stood up, his face suddenly red. "Charlene, come on and no," she snapped, turning toward him but locking eyes with me. "She needs to hear it. She's not a child anymore, right? Then let's stop pretending. You don't live here, Brielle. You left. You have your own life now." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "I didn't abandon you. I went to college." Charlene shrugged. "And while you were off finding yourself, we built a new life here. Gracie needed stability. Your dad and I are building a future. You can't just walk back in and expect everything to freeze in time waiting for you." I turned to my dad, searching his face for any sign of resistance. Of defense, but all I saw was guilt and defeat. She said it made legal sense. He muttered, not even looking at me, "In case something happened to me." She and Gracie needed security. "You're grown now, Brielle. You'll be fine." Security. She married into this house less than a year ago, and her daughter took my bed, my desk, my mother's things. But she needed security, and what about me? I whispered, "What about my mom, her memory, her things?" Charlene scoffed. "Your mom died 10 years ago. We're not living in a shrine." That line, that sentence, it buried itself into my spine and lit a fire I didn't even know I had left. I stormed upstairs and started packing. Not just clothes, everything. My old journals, photo albums, even the broken necklace Mom gave me for my 13th birthday that I swore I'd fix one day. I took what was mine, what little was left, and zipped it all up with trembling hands. Dad knocked on the door just as I was dragging the suitcase out. "Bri, wait," he said. I didn't. I brushed past him, down the stairs, out the door, and into the sunlight that suddenly felt too bright for how dark everything inside me had become. He called after me, but I didn't turn back, because that was the day I realized something. I had been erased, and the people who should have protected my place in that home and that family handed it to someone else and expected me to smile. But I wasn't done. They thought I'd walk away quietly. They had no idea what I still knew and what I was about to do. I left without slamming the door. That was the most power I had in that moment. Quiet exit. No tears, no begging. I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing me shatter. They'd already stripped me of my room, my memories, my name on the mailbox, but they hadn't taken me. Not really, not yet. I sat in my car for a long time before I even turned the key. The suitcase sat in the backseat like a coffin of my past, filled with all the pieces of myself they didn't want. I had nowhere to go, not really. I'd been back in town just for the holidays, crashing at the only place I ever thought I'd still be welcome. But clearly, They'd rewritten the rules of the house, of the family, and I was no longer a character in their script. I wasn't crying, not even angry, not in the traditional way. What I felt was quieter. Like a slow, burning calculation, that kind of betrayal doesn't ignite rage right away. It sinks, deep, and then it waits. I checked into a cheap motel for the night, mold in the corners, a buzzing fridge, the kind of place where the lamp flickers when the heater turns on. But I slept like a stone, and when I woke up the next morning, I felt something I hadn't felt in years' clarity. By noon, I was in a coffee shop with Wi-Fi and a notebook. The same one I used in college to sketch ideas for my final design portfolio. I opened it, flipped past the forgotten pages, and began a new one with 3 words at the top. This is mine, not just a declaration, a promise. I wasn't going to spiral, I wasn't going to plead, I was going to build, and I was going to build in a way that left no doubt who I was and what they lost when they cut me out. Within a week, I'd rented a 1-bedroom apartment on the other side of town. Old brick walls, high ceilings, and just enough charm to feel like potential lived there. It wasn't big, it wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Every corner, every shelf, every squeaky floorboard, it belonged to me. But here's the thing, I didn't just get that place to survive. I got it to prepare, because if Charlene thought she could erase me and write a new chapter in my family's story, one where I didn't exist, she was about to find out that I was never the kind of girl who stayed silent for long. I used every free second to dig. I remembered things, little things, conversations Dad didn't think I was listening to, papers I'd glimpsed in drawers, business calls he used to take when he thought I was asleep. I started researching my father's construction firm, the same one my mother helped him start back in the day, long before Charlene was in the picture. I looked into public records, business filings, real estate moves. And slowly, a pattern started to form. Charlene hadn't just married into comfort. She'd maneuvered herself into a position of control. She convinced my father to sign over assets, made him appoint her daughter, Gracie, as a junior brand representative. For a company she didn't know the first thing about, there were donations to shell companies, transfers, silent dissolving of partnerships my mother had helped build, and that house, the one I was raised in, wasn't just sentimental property. It was one of the first houses my dad ever built. It was featured in a regional design magazine because of the landscaping my mom planned herself. It was legacy, my mother's, my father's, mine. Now it was a photo backdrop for Gracie's TikToks and Charlene's boozy brunches. I started gathering evidence quietly, carefully. I spoke to one of Dad's old business partners, a kind man named Mitch, who remembered me as the girl who used to draw blueprints in crayon. I told him I wanted to understand what was happening to the company. What happened to my mom's part of it? Mitch's face darkened. He didn't say much at first, but his silence said everything. I asked, was her share signed away? He finally answered, not legally, but it's like it was, disappeared. By now, I knew what I was building wasn't just a comeback, it was a reckoning. My apartment became my war room. I kept documents in color-coded folders. I saved screenshots, voice recordings, old emails. Every little thing I could find that connected Charlene to the rewriting of our family history. But I wasn't just focused on revenge. I was focused on reclamation. I started freelancing again, branding work. Digital art? It didn't pay much, but it gave me purpose, and slowly, my name started to circulate in small business circles again. One client turned into 2, 2 into 5. A bakery asked me to do a mural on their brick wall downtown. I painted a sunrise made of broken pieces coming back together. They called it the Rebirth Wall. It made local news, and guess who saw it? Charlene. She had the nerve to call me. "You're making a scene," she said. I smiled through the phone. "No, Charlene. I'm making a name." She hung up. That apartment, that mural, the designs I was creating, they weren't just acts of survival. They were claims to the identity they tried to erase. Claims to the bloodline they tried to rewrite, and I wasn't done, because if they thought I was rebuilding just to prove a point, they hadn't seen what I was planning next. It was a rainy Tuesday when I found it. Funny how the world never slows down. even when you're quietly unraveling inside. The clouds rolled in like an omen, and the thunder didn't feel dramatic, it felt intimate, like the sky finally knew what I'd been carrying. I was cleaning out the last of the boxes I'd stuffed into my apartment closet. I'd been too busy building my plan, chasing fragments of stolen legacy, and nursing the slow ache in my chest that came from being erased. But that day, the silence in my apartment felt thick, so I made a cup of tea and opened the final box. Inside were picture frames, old sketchbooks, and a worn shoebox covered in floral wrapping paper. My heart twisted. I hadn't seen it in years. My mom had given it to me when I left for college for things that matter. She'd said, even if you don't know they do yet. Back then, I'd used it to store concert stubs, dried flowers, dumb little notes from my first boyfriend, fragments of a life I barely recognized anymore. But nestled beneath it all, under a faded envelope and a piece of velvet ribbon, was something that made my entire body go still. A sealed letter in my mother's handwriting, and on the back, written in delicate ink, were the words, "For Brielle, if anything ever happens to me." My breath caught in my throat. I sat on the edge of my bed, rain tapping against the windows, and just stared at it. It felt heavier than paper should, like it carried weight that could crush or resurrect. I opened it with trembling fingers. My darling Brielle, if you're reading this, then I wasn't brave enough to say everything I wanted while I was alive. I know you're probably trying to keep your head up, pretending like you don't need anything from anyone. But I need you to know this. I always knew Charlene was after more than just your father's love. I saw the way she looked at the business, at the house, even at you, like everything was an obstacle to be moved or owned. I tried to protect you. I even spoke to a lawyer about putting safeguards on your inheritance, your place in the company, and in this family. But your father, he was blind to it. Maybe he was tired. Maybe he didn't want to fight anymore. But I fought. For you. If something happens to me, please look in the blue folder in my old studio desk. It's behind the bottom drawer. I kept copies there. Evidence. Things that matter. Brielle, don't let them erase you. This family is yours too. That house, that legacy, you carry more of it in your hands than any of them ever will. Go be who I always knew you were becoming. I love you more than time allows. Mom, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, completely still, as something ancient and alive started to awaken inside me. She knew. She'd seen it coming. My erasure. The way Charlene slowly tightened her grip around everything my mother had helped build. She'd tried to protect me even in death. And now I had her voice in my hands, her truth in ink. It changed everything. I drove to my childhood home that night. It wasn't impulsive. It was necessary. I parked across the street, engine off, headlights dim. Through the large living room window, I could see my father in his armchair, watching some crime drama he wouldn't remember. Charlene on the couch, wine in hand, laughing too loud at something that wasn't funny. And Gracie flipping through a catalog, her feet up on the coffee table that used to be my mother's. I used the spare key I still had from years ago. They never changed the locks, maybe because they assumed I'd never come back. I didn't knock. I walked straight in, boots wet with rain, heart pulsing like a war drum. Charlene looked up first. Her wine glass froze midair. "What the hell are you doing here?" My father turned, startled. "Brielle." I didn't answer. I walked right past them, straight down the hallway, into the old art studio. They followed, of course, voices rising behind me. Gracie stomped after me like a child who didn't get her way. "Get out of this house." Charlene yelled. "It's not your house." I replied, voice calm, terrifyingly calm. "Not all of it." I yanked the bottom drawer out of the old desk, reached behind it, and pulled out a thick blue folder. The moment I held it, I knew it was real. My mother's truth, not just spoken in words, but backed by evidence, receipts, contracts, letters from lawyers. Legal documentation showing she still held partial ownership in the firm and the house, and I was named her successor. I turned and locked eyes with my father. "You signed it all away." I said, "But you had no right to, not all of it." He looked stunned. Confused, weak, but Charlene, her mask cracked in real time. She tried to lunge for the folder. I stepped back, raised my phone, and hit record. "Try it." I whispered, Touch me, give me one more piece of proof. Charlene froze. Gracie started crying. I turned to my father one last time. You let her erase Mom, and then you let her erase me. But guess what? Mom's voice was louder than you thought, and I'm done being silent. I walked out without looking back. Out into the rain, into the storm, and I was the storm. That night, I emailed everything in that folder to the family's original attorney, then to the press, then to a legal firm known for ripping apart shady estate transfers. This wasn't revenge anymore. It was reclamation. It was justice, and I was just getting started. They sent the invitations hoping I'd stay comfortable in my half. Finished life rumored to be starting over, no longer speaking to them, and fading into the background. Even Dad's name was there, alongside Charlene's, in the signature line at the bottom. The same people who erased me once believed I'd too erased myself when I disappeared. They were wrong. The day was crisp, sunny, the kind of autumn afternoon the whole neighborhood would envy. Oblivious to the storm I carried inside, I parked down the street, heart pounding. I carried no suitcase, just a blue folder and a camera phone in my palm. The house looked triumphant. Pumpkins on the porch, oversized blackened, orange balloons, a long white linen table spread, and Grandma's old hummingbird chime still ringing in the breeze. I ringed the bell. Father answered, stiff in a crisp shirt. Charlene and Gracie hovered behind him like stage decorators. When he saw me, his face froze, careful flinch. He stepped aside. I walked through the threshold, not suspicious, not cowardly. Purposeful, glad you made it, he said, voice small. I nodded, thank you for inviting me. There was a long pause, then music started soft. Plates slid across the big table. Aunt Marlene pinched her lips when she saw me. Cousins exchanged quick glances. It felt like the opening scene of a play in a house we'd built together now so perfectly fake. I took a seat at the end of the table. No one sat beside me. That was fine. I was there on my own terms. It was part of the plan. Dinner started. Charlene made a big speech about family traditions, heritage, new beginnings. A portrait of grandparents hung over the mantel, and I saw Dad's eyes graze across it as he inhaled Charlene's words. Mid-meal, she normally would bring up some kind of toast, but I cut ahead. I stood up. The room fell silent. I brought something. I said, voice steady. I held up the manila folder. She gasped. Dad looked sharp. Gracie slouched. Family chatter faded behind me, filtered down to attention. This folder is everything. My mother's will, the changes Charlene made, lawyers' letters showing signed transfers, all the ways she quietly cut me out and built her own version of our family. I placed it on the table. Her face turned white, confusion flickered, shame, the wind changed. She tried to cut in. Maddie, this isn't. I took a photo with a single click. The camera flash went off. I recorded their reaction, the faces that once mocked me, sitting stunned, now looking at me with something unlearned. I thought it was appropriate. I said that everyone finally sees the story as it really happened. She sputtered. Dad looked strained enough to cry. Gracie looked like she was about to vomit. Silence rose between us, thicker than grief, heavier than regret. An aunt nearby whispered, "Oh my God." It wasn't sympathy, it was realization. Charlene got up, ripped the folder off the table. I blocked her arm so fast it surprised us both. That was mine, I said quietly. And now that truth is public. I scanned the room. Some relatives pulled phones, others sat frozen, and then the judge. Like final blow, one of the cousins cleared her throat and said, "I'd like to say something." A hush. She looked at everyone. We all came together tonight to honor tradition. But Brooke's not part of that picture anymore, not because she left, but because some of you made sure of it, and that needs to change. I sat, breathing easy for the first time in months. I watched Charlene dodge her gaze. Dad stared at the cracked fingers of the table. Gracie blinked. The moment wasn't about revenge. It was about marking the change. I wasn't optional anymore. Less than 24 hours later, I saw the response. An old colleague who ran an influential parenting blog had shared my leaked photos. The post title, "Why Families Write You Out When You Grow and How One Daughter Rewrote Her Story." It hit 500 zeros, 0 views within 2 hours. People were sharing their own stories siblings erased. wills changed, rooms swapped, each comment fueling the electricity behind what I started. At the same time, the original attorney, the one who held the blue folder, called me. We can refile. We can press, wake up the judge. This goes deeper than property law. It's coercion, elder manipulation, and income fraud. He asked me to make the rest, to testify. Prove what they did was intentional, to show Mom's letter, to show the deed, to show that house belongs to a legacy, not a new narrative. I stayed overnight at my apartment, lights on, heart feeling heavy and full until I got an email from a former high school friend I hadn't talked to in years. I never knew she planned it this way. That letter, that drive, each sentence. This is larger than us. I believe you. We all do. Thank you for fighting. Later that week, Ming, the small bakery owner who ran the mural project downtown, invited me back to paint something new. A phoenix rising behind broken bricks and white lilies. I agreed, and the payment was good. This time she told me it would go in the new Women's Empowerment Center. I paused. When I came to decorate her house, I saw the division deepened. The house was no longer so polished. Paint chips by the door. Dinner chairs arranged loosely, no balloons. The house looked different now, smaller, as if it was shrinking from me. I walked through calmly, studied each room again as if auditing a memory bank. Nostalgia didn't make me soft. Instead, I realized something. I was building a new one. Darkness came, but false redemption did too. Charlene had texts delivered to my phone, offering a new arrangement. I laughed out loud. It seemed so thin, so parched, talking about rebuilding together under a single roof. Rebuilt from what? Lies? No. I saw their panic. I saw their shrinking fortress, their denial flickering under headlines and probate filings. But I didn't go back. I kept building. I kept painting. I kept talking to people who at first called me their once lost daughter, and then copied me on letters to charities and therapists and parents, because the truth didn't need flipping. It didn't need polishing. It was already written in ink and recorded in sounds and shared with thousands of halfway, broken strangers who needed it to be real. I thought it might break me again going back, facing them one last time, standing in a space they believed they claimed. But grief had taught me something powerful during this journey. Legacy isn't transferred by marriage certificates or golden veneers. It's reclaimed by truth, grit, and refusing to be erased. The morning of the final hearing, the air tasted clear. I kept Grandma's letter in my pocket and Mom's blue folder in my bag. I wore the necklace she had given me at 13, the one I vowed to fix but never did. It felt like wearing her bravery. At 10 a.m., I entered the courtroom. The seat reserved for me was directly across from Charlene, who looked small and unsettled in her power suit. My father sat beside her. Grief flickered dimly in his eyes, but shame lit heavy across his face. Gracie sat further down, silent, her phone in her lap like an anchor. The judge entered, the room hushed. My attorney laid out the evidence. The original deed and will with my name and Mother's partial ownership, Grandma's video narration, and Mom's letter explaining manipulations, business transfers, and shell. Company trail, coordinated by Charlene, first-hand testimonies from Dad's former partner, and community witnesses one by one, the facts hammered home. Lawyer after lawyer made the case crystal clear. This wasn't about rebelling daughter returning home. It was about wrongful seizure, abusive trust, financial manipulation, elder coercion, and during all the testimony, I sat there silent, still, unwavering. Then, when the judge finally asked if I wished to speak, I rose. My voice echoed but felt quiet inside. Your Honor, my mother, this house was her dream, her legacy. She left it to me because she raised me to stand tall, even if everyone else thinks you belong somewhere else. I didn't come here seeking revenge. I came to ensure her life isn't stolen by someone who never loved or understood it. I came to remind you all, my mother still speaks. My grandmother still watches through me. My words settled in the room. After hours of deliberation, the judge returned. He handed down his ruling. 1. The original will indeed valid. Orders reversed in my favor. 2. 3. All transfers signed under Charlene's influence. Null. 4. 5. Gracie's official position rescinded. 6. 7. Charlene required to repay estate funds diverted. 8. 9. Legal fees and damages awarded to beneficiary me. 10. The verdict reverberated at once, powerful yet precise, just enough to leave no shadow of doubt. Charlene looked stricken. I could hear her labored breathing inside the tense hush. My father stared at the table. Gracie's face crumpled into tears. For the first time since this all began, I felt no hatred, only resolution. I collected my things in silence, stepped past them, and walked out into the bright autumn sunshine. For once, everything they used to hold over me felt smaller, distant, irrelevant. I was standing in my truth. A few days later, I stood back outside the house that once belonged to all of us. Crowds of neighbors quietly lingered in hearing of the news. A local reporter asked, "How do you feel?" I turned to face her. I feel like I'm finally breathing, not just for me, but for my mom, for what she believed our family should have been. I looked up at those reclaimed windows. Homemade pumpkins still sat on the porch, autumn bulbs stiff and blue. But in that moment, I wasn't nostalgic. I was free. I held the microphone for the reporter to repeat my words verbatim. They tried to rewrite my story. They thought they could erase me, but they forgot one thing. Truth doesn't disappear. It finds her voice, and today, I'm exactly where I was always meant to be. She nodded soft. I walked away before my father or Charlene could emerge. I didn't look back. Every view behind me felt like a reminder of all they almost stole from me. The next chapter started quietly. I signed over nothing. I didn't renovate that house. I didn't sell the land. Instead, I took Mom's share and set up a small foundation for women erased by divorce, grief, inheritance drama. Women like me. I used the business funds recovered to support counseling, legal aid, and empowerment art grants. I sent the donation in my mom's and grandmother's names. Meanwhile, the media coverage snowballed. My mural made the local arts magazine, Phoenix Rising. The nonprofit coverage followed, and the womanhood legacy grew stronger with every retelling. A year later, I was invited back to paint a permanent mural on a women's center building downtown. The design was careful, a young woman emerging from shattered stained glass, vivid red, blue, gold, surrounding her neck, the same heart locket I wore. At the bottom, inscribed, "This is Brielle's reclamation. This is Maria's memory." That ribbon of color held all my mother's hopes and grandma's dreams in broad strokes. Public, visible, unerasable. At the opening ceremony, they set photos of both of them side by side. My mother's soft smile, grandma's bold gaze. Mine was in front, brush in hand, tear and ache and fire on my face. Victuals and champagne made their rounds. People whispered, hugged, and nodded, uplifted by the truth I embodied. Charlene and Dad tried following the news, but found their world growing thin. Social media mentions, academic essays about the story, young survivors reaching out. They were no longer able to pull back the curtain. Not because I shouted, because I showed up, with evidence, clarity, passion, and refused to vanish. Now I live in a house I chose for myself, renting a modest 3-bedroom cottage overlooking a community garden. I plant lilies like Grandma did. I paint, I volunteer, and every Sunday I go to the hospice my provider founded in memory of Ma, sharing art therapy classes with women whose stories have margins of pain and ink of courage. I haven't spoken to Dad since the court ruling. I never will. Not until he publicly apologizes, not until Charlene repays willingly, not until they show they understand what it truly means to love someone enough to protect their memory. Hands uncreased by betrayal. But I'm okay, I'm more than okay, because I'm breathing, because my mother's voice still echoes, because legacy, real legacy, is not given, it's taken back, and I'm living proof. Want another story like this, where identity meets truth head on? Hit subscribe, leave a. If you believe betrayal can't erase the worth that's written in your bloodline, and I'll see you in the next story.